Hello and welcome to New Europe Studios, where you can watch us make the news. I'm your host, Alexandros Karanakis, and this is This Week in New Europe, in which we bring you the most important stories of the print edition. Our cover story, The Great Escape. A record number of European commissioners are cutting their losses and trying to jump ship, meanwhile trying to cover their own and protect their own interests. A quarter of the European Commission is looking to become members of the European Parliament in the upcoming elections. Next, our editorial, Monet Matters, looks at the situation in Turkey and the destabilization that is predicted for the nation's future in light of the EU elections and the Turkey-EU relationship in Turkey, the elections and the responsibilities of the EU. Continuing on the motif of our cover story, this week's Cassandra, One More Nail in the Coffin of Europe, talks about the joining of a sinking ship as the second Barroso Commission will likely see 7 new faces for the last half year. NATO's Rhetorical Bluff and the new Great Game. NATO cut all ties with Russia, but still maintains lines of communication with the Kremlin. NATO is facing its most acute geopolitical crisis in years, the fallout from Moscow's Crimean annexation, the Great Game of the 21st century. Next, we move to the heart of Europe, where Schulz is under fire. The President of the European Parliament and European Commission presidential candidate is being accused of abusing his position by a range of members of Parliament. MEP Bart Staes says that Schulz removed a paragraph critical of himself from the 2012 parliamentary budget report. Now we move to Southern Europe. Veneto region, an armed group to secede? The Veneto region in Italy is looking to secede and gain independence. This was decided during an unofficial referendum held last week. Following this referendum, a number of secessionists were arrested under suspicion of trying to organize a terrorist attack on Veneto's famous San Marco Square. This week, our knowledge network stays close to home and looks at the challenges facing the EU and the future of the institutions. This time it's different, writes Jimmy Jamar. Will there be a rise of the extreme right during the forthcoming elections? And what will this mean for Europe? The head of the European Commission Representation Office to Belgium writes about the events that he saw at the Right Turn for Europe symposium held in Cologne on March 17th, and explores the implication of statements made. The EU's Double Standards by Adigoni Papadopoulou, member of the European Parliament. The Ukraine is receiving billions in aid from the EU, meanwhile the southern member states are suffering from austerity, poverty, debt, and rising unemployment. So why does the EU throw billions into the Ukraine well, even though it's not an EU candidate, while demanding strict austerity measures against its own citizens and member states, asks Papadopoulou. Democracy versus Bailout by Christos Kissas. The 2009 Eurozone crisis put several EU economies under the direct control of the Troika, the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF. Kissas goes into how the Troika essentially controls the financial aid that is given to countries and operates under strict norms, and what this means for the European citizens in bailout countries. Next, member of the European Parliament Marlena Kopa draws a parallel between the European elections and Eurovision. The Euro elections draw closer, and yet no one is talking about Europe. In Brussels, it looks like everyone is waiting for the fresh faces before initiating talks. So what is so Euro about the Euro elections, asks Kopa. US Self-Restraint in Cyberspace by Greg Austin of the East-West Institute. The US Department of Defense has issued a new doctrine of self-restraint in cyberspace. This is considered to be a milestone in the evolution of cyber diplomacy in a world marked by rising concerns over American supremacy in military intelligence uses of cyber assets. Next, who to choose? A new José Manuel Barroso or a new Jacques Delors? The president of the European Economic and Social Committee, Henri Melos, looks at what is next for the European elections. The question, and the only one that heads of state should be asking themselves, is whether they want another helping of Barroso or a new Delors. Emergency. Need for a European Rating Agency by Philippe Kotsaridis, economist. Kotsaridis explores the possibilities of creating a European rating agency and what this would mean for the European economic institutions. And now we move to our columns in this week's Constructive Ambiguity, Gibberish Unleashed. Someone in Brussels has taken it upon themselves to create a database of slogans used in the European elections. Andy Carling asks a quintessential question: why? And no end in sight for Kashagan oil field woes. In this week's Energy Insider, Kostis Geropoulos looks at Kazakhstan and when the giant Kashagan oil fields will start up. Production is slated to start after the North Caspian Operating Company concludes its research into gas leaks. The catch? This research keeps getting delayed. In the New Europe studios, we hosted a number of guests over the past week. Rising Africa needs to fight hunger to grow, says Modibo Traore, regional coordinator for the FAO. And the East-West Institute's professorial fellow Greg Austin says that the Ukrainian crisis will take decades to solve. European Commissioner Maria Damanaki says that putting all blame on the Commission is flattering in her interview at New Europe Studios. And we end This Week in New Europe with our shooting gallery, which features European Commission President José Manuel Barroso and European Council President Herman Van Rompuy, who, despite being on the same team, just can't seem to get their communication right. These articles and many more can be found on neweurope.eu. Thank you for watching This Week in New Europe. For links to these articles, look below, or visit neweurope.eu for many more. Thank you for watching This Week in New Europe. Follow our profiles on your favorite social media to stay current with European and world affairs. And as always, you're welcome to come on down to New Europe Studios on Place Jourdan, where you can eat, drink, relax, and watch us make the news.